most of you know about SVP India. So, but just to repeat, SVP India started almost 6 years ago, and SVP International was started over 20 years ago in Seattle, and by a bunch of ex-Microsoft folks, and we're privileged to have some of them even here on this call. And today we have over 3,500 partners across 12 countries. And India, of course, now we have over 250 partners. Now, what's a partner? A partner, all of us are partners. I'm a partner of SVP Pune, and also I'm the current chair of SVP India. But the concept of the partner is that we contribute some money, we contribute time, some of us take responsibilities to manage the grants. It's a very, very collaborative effort. And the institution is run by 7 full-time general managers and a country director. Mrinal, who's coordinating this call, is actually our country director for SVP India. And the GMs are in the 7 cities. So that's the background. We are privileged to have 43 non-profits whom we currently support, either through money or through mentoring or through both, which has been the privilege of SVP India. We also have a very good partnership with the Tata Trusts, and we have together coined something called the Million Jobs Mission. As most of you know, the sustainable livelihoods is one of the biggest challenges in India, will be even more so as we come out of COVID. So that's clearly something that we're excited about. If you take all the entities we support, large, small, medium, together we've created about 260,000 jobs at this point. Still a way to go before 1 million, but we are excited. So I think that's a little bit about SVP India. And what we started doing as after the whole COVID and the lockdown started was, we said, let's keep the engagement going. And the engagement going is important for our partners. It's important for the corporate social responsibility folks who support many of our entities, apart from SVP's support. And of course, it's extremely important for the participants in the skills sector and other NGOs we support. So what we've done is we started off with a leadership series, which was run by our global chair, Sophia, who's also the Giving Pledge chair of Microsoft. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we had Arun Maira, who I think he's an advisor on our board, also a former member of the Planning Commission. The second one, we had 3 outstanding CSR heads, chaired by our Bombay chair, Amita Chauhan. Today, of course, my co-chair for this panel, or the co-moderator, is Gaurav Nanavati, and I'll introduce him in a minute. And we have 3 of our most outstanding NGOs whom we support. Ruchi, who is Pune City Connect, and PCC was one of the first 2 entities that SVP Pune supported. Then we have Meera Shenoy, who runs Youth for Jobs, and she'll talk to you. And Kalyan, who runs the Pan IIT Reach for India mission. So it's exciting to be here. The way we'll structure the session today is, we will start with a presentation by Vikas Gambhir. Vikas heads a non-profit of Grant Thornton, and he and his colleague Sudhi have done some extraordinary work in looking at how NGOs are being supported, how are they actually surviving and planning to thrive as we go forward. And we'll start with that, and Gaurav will introduce in a minute. After that, we will have the 3 presentations of Pan IIT Reach for India, of Youth for Jobs, as well as Pune City Connect. The common theme that we've requested all of them is to talk about the theme for the Thought Leadership series, which is moving from relief, which all of us have been engaged in, to recovery, which is the process we hope has already started and will definitely start Monday morning in this country, and all the way to resilience, because as all of us know, the resilience of the country, of societies, of NGOs, of corporates are all being tested in this crisis. And we want to make sure that we are building resilient organizations, not only SVP, but all our supported partners. So that's broadly, I think, what we are attempting to do. Let me start by first introducing Gaurav. Gaurav and I have been friends forever. In fact, we've been on the National Council of the CII together. And Gaurav, apart from being a very successful industrialist based out of Ahmedabad, is also a very passionate social entrepreneur, in the sense he also supports artisans. And we are privileged to have Gaurav as the chairperson of SVP in Gujarat, and specifically in Ahmedabad. So over to you, Gaurav bhai. Please get started.
Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you for this generous introduction. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this third session in the series Thought Leadership of SVP India. Today's subject is Success Stories of Transformation and Resilience. I was just wondering, thinking about what are we going to discuss and how are you going to continue this session, just thought came to me that 2 months ago, would anybody, like when we do our scenario planning and scenario drawings, would we have ever thought that the whole world will close down for a month together? In our SWOT analysis that we do in our planning, would we have ever thought of this threat of pandemic striking everyone and every country and every nook and corner of the world, of the globe? So this is a unique time, absolutely a different time, and life that we have known, as we have known, work as we have known, growth as we have known, the definition of growth that we have known, everything is going to change forever, and is further going to be totally a different world when we come out of this pandemic. But I also believe that every thought, every threat brings along with some opportunity, and whoever can grab this opportunity, identify this opportunity, grab it, would be probably come out as a success. I'm just thinking about role of SVP. SVP has been a traditionally grant-giving, hand-holding, and mentoring organization of people we have got together, and we're doing that with 40-odd NGOs. I think we should also use this platform to bring all the our grantees and supporting organizations together to exchange ideas on how they are dealing with this situation. I think we need to do that, and that is why I think this particular session is very important, where we are bringing 3 NGOs on the platform, and also Grant Thornton, who have done such a deep study of NGOs standing. I think that is going to help them a lot. So I think we are waiting for Vikas to start off. So without further ado, let me introduce Vikas quickly. Vikas Gambhir is the leading non-profit, not-for-profit and CSR advisory vertical of Grant Thornton. Vikas has more than 25 years of experience as banker, consultant, and advisor to varied clients in finance, manufacturing, healthcare, and not-for-profit sector. For the past decade, his focus has been on social entrepreneurs and not-for-profit vertical, where he is working across various themes like healthcare, education, environment, and consulting India's leading non-profits. Vikas is also a lead partner of SVP in Delhi chapter. So Vikas, it's all yours.
Thanks, Gaurav Bhai and Ganesh, for setting the context in introduction. So by the time I'll just share a screen, I'm putting that across. Somebody in my team, of course, putting it. So I'll just give a little context behind this, study. So this study we institutionalized, in the first week of lockdown, actually, when the lockdown started, and of course, globally it started happening in other countries, and we were getting, the same sort of feedback from our other member affiliate firms across the globe. So at that time, we reached out to, some of our clients and close friends within the fraternity in NGO space, as well as with the CSR foundations. And, we thought it's right time to have some thought leadership curated, wherein, as, Ganesh mentioned, from, relief, response, resilience aspect, what an NGO should also, do. Of course, big ones are doing it, basis the kind of depth they have in terms of the capacity and people. But we thought for the mid and the smaller set of organization, let's put across a quick, 4-5 slider document, which can be helpful in terms of going through those quick checklist points. And we have given this, entire study a 3-pronged approach, which is like heal or pause or halt in the first phase. Then, of course, plan for what is unfolding, and refresh what you planned actually. So if you can move to the next slide. So, these were some of the challenges as, COVID impacted India and lockdown happened. Of course, field staff movement got hugely impacted for the organizations who were grassroots, and of course, who are the main primary recipient, working with a lot of, implementing agency, as well as the ones who are working directly on the field. Work from home for NGOs was something which, was totally off context. Nobody thought about it, because NGO means, you're on the field actually. Of course, this space never thought of business continuity, as for-profit sector think about it. But I think this situation, throw that challenge of business continuity for NGOs also. Of course, investment of IT infrastructure, whether the organization is ready, like, many other corporates are working from home, they have work from home policies. Of course, all these things were never thought about in this space. So, these were some challenges which, as this space filled, we thought it's wise to come up with this study. So as we move to the next slide, as I mentioned, it's halt, plan, and refresh. And some of my, friends and colleagues mentioned halt is a negative connotation. So it's a heal or a pause, I'll say, approach in the first phase. So as you know, yesterday the lockdown has been again announced to be extended, and and relaxations are also there. So as we move to the next slide, you'll see there are around 10, 12 points which are on the pause side. So this actually phase is nothing but you have to introspect now as an organization. So there are although 10, 12 points, but I'll just briefly sort of summarize them into 3, 4 buckets. The first and the foremost is a time for reassessment. You have to reassess, you have to refocus, you have to re-strategize. Fortunately, unfortunately, the last, first calendar quarter gone, and this was a time when, most of us as for-profit or not-for-profit draw our business plans for the year. We draw our budgets also, which in the current scenarios, are not valid, I'll say. So I think this is the time, and I'm sure most of you would be doing it. But of course, a lot of us being in the COVID response have taken this as a little, low priority, but this is the time to actually reassess those budgets. I think you have to do it irrespective of donor asking you for not. I think you do and inform. So what I do once I'll talk through these points on, pause or halt, I will also give a little, connected points on the plan also, which are directly correlated so that we don't duplicate those elements. So please do spend time on re-budgeting, both at the program level and at the organization level. Reach out to your donors. So this reassessment has to happen now in next, a month or so that irrespective, we don't know it's as it's unfolding when the field staff would be operational. But I think it's wise to prepare ourselves, for the augmentation as soon as possible and re-budget it for the quarter. While doing this, also we have witnessed while we were doing this thought leadership that in the past 1 or 2 years, many NGOs have drawn up their strategy plans for next 3 to 5 years. I think this is the time when we have to sort of re-strategize on those. I know there has been a lot of heavy investments made by the organizations, but unfortunately we have to re-strategize. So please don't, think it from a mid-term perspective, but I think this is the time we have to actually redraw a strategy as we, go forward. Also, this is the time under the reassessment and reforecasting that as a not-for-profit, we always have been cognizant of the fact of keeping our budgets pretty tight and all. But I think as for-profit, that word does look good, but I think we need to see cost optimization opportunities for NGOs also. So like, for example, we were dealing with one of the corporate foundation and while, having this discussion, and this is the reassessment of the budgets and, and cost optimization element emphasized. They were able to save a reasonable, portion of money in travel as envisaged in the coming years, coming months, on conferences, on training and all, which they were happy to contribute back to the corpus of the NGO and on the IT infrastructure. So having said that, I think though we have to be resilient in terms of finding those opportunities, but I think redeployment can always happen on the areas which we are struggling as an organization. So please reassess, refocus. The second bucket I'll say would be largely on the communication side. So I'm sure, all of you, as leaders of your organization would be doing it. But honestly speaking, still we found that donor fraternity, unless asked or reach out to you, probably, and especially at the time when we have redrawn the budget for the year and we've got the commitment for the year, probably we feel that, there's no need to immediately go for that communication. But I think the moment you'll think about re-strategizing, reassessment of your budgets, I think the immediate step before and after that has to happen on the communication side, of course, with the donors. And thankfully in this current situation, we have seen that if you have been proactive, reaching out to your donors on certain asks which you probably would not have done in the past ever, have hit a success rate of 70%. That means donors go and agree, what you're saying, because you are the most responsive on the ground as of now. So please do communicate with the donors. Do keep your channel of communication open with your, community with whom you're working and the field employees. So, of course, I know you have been dealing with communication, channels with your employees on a regular basis. But while conducting the study, when we actually reached out to a few of the field workers, state offices, because many organizations work in 7, 8, 10, 15 states, and you have got your project office location, co-staff working over there. But of course, as a leader, so there would be managers who will be talking to them. But as leader, I think it also is important that there's a common style sitting across to the field. Believe me, it works quite a bit. And I mean, there was a classic example we witnessed very recently, that one of the state head who, in the initial first week was a little apprehensive what's going to happen. And of course, he was pretty instrumental in having good relation with the government, actually channelized a very big response from the government. Moment the CEO had a word with him and given a go ahead, that go ahead and do whatever you want, and mobilize, the program on the ground. And it was just a small motivation, but believe me, it helped. So having said that, just says that do communicate to your field staff, and in turn, they should also give a consistent message to the community where you are actually working. That is really important. Third bucket, which I would see in this slide, and which emanates again, in the next phase also of plan, is to refocus on your policies, procedures, and guidelines. So I'm sure many of the organizations who have grown in the past few years have developed their SOPs, their policies, procedures, guidelines very effectively. But I think, as an example, of procurement in a very normal circumstance and a procurement in a disaster response have a very different connotation. So I think we need to rejig and redraft our policies quickly to make sure there's a commonality of understanding across the organization. And also, in this current circumstances, as I mentioned in the previous challenge slide, somehow as NGOs we would have, but not necessarily as a mandate from board or as an investment from donor. We don't invest much in the IT infrastructure, but this is the time when you are seeking redrafting of the budgets by the donors. I think a bit of investment in IT infrastructure would be required, because as we move forward, a lot of aspect, either from an implementation and a monitoring and evaluation perspective, have to move from manual to IT driven kind of tools and technologies. So please refocus and redraw your strategy on those IT investments also at current time. Policies regarding work from home, which most of us through the corporate world know, there are policies coming, but I think we as not-for-profit also should invest in drafting those work from home policies, because it's important for majority of a field staff who is working on the ground under lockdown. These are the policies enablement which helps quite a bit and bring clarity in terms of how they're engaging with the community and the government at the field location. So please look into redrafting those policies on IT, on data recovery, because some of the programs, say on health side, need a lot of protection on the data recovery. Element should get institutionalized now. So please do start thinking, having that communication open with your donors. And in many instances, as I said, where donors have agreed either on the corpus or such kind of investments which they never thought in the initial years of investment, have started giving it a thought, and many have agreed also. So it's a matter of asking. So do ask on those lines. And I think somewhere this time has triggered all of us to think about having a business continuity plan as a not-for-profit organization also, which I think probably never was a priority for us, because at times NGOs are the ones who are either responding on the disaster whenever it happens. So we probably think disaster can't happen to us because we respond in such situations. But as an organization, I think it's important that we should invest on those. Other than these three broad categories, I think as there are a couple of points that stay informed. MCA, various regulators are coming up with a lot of notifications. And of course they have sought feedback from people. Some are yet to be notified, but something as an example that from CSR parlance, society trust are something which would be questionable if that notification comes. So don't just have refocus done on those elements. Also, don't think that in the current situation, let's address the response and relief first, and then we'll focus on this. But I think these are the elements. Be cognizant that if you have to reach out to your advisors on those lines, if the board has to be involved in having those discussions of change of structure, I think please do that. So these are some of the broad, I'll say, element. Of course, on the fundraise side, I think each one of us are working with the existing donors. I think all of you are making sure that any opportunity on that side under COVID response is taken up, and I'm sure there's a focus on the fundraise. So please do that. But the only submission here would be, unless you have capacity, capability, don't try spreading yourself too thin on the thematic area which you haven't done in the past. Just because in the COVID response you're getting money from the donor, but I think be cognizant of that fact and take a very judicious call. Keep your board involved in those elements, and just don't jump on any response for which you're getting the money. So broadly, I'll see the next screen. If you see, it's all these elements which I've just talked about in terms of proactive approach being taken on all those broad heads. Of course, there's one more slide I have, last one on the refresh side. But honestly speaking, this is not the time to have a discussion on the refresh, because the way things are unfolding and the unpredictability of the situation. I think the refresh will keep on evolving. But currently, on a closing note, I would just say, on the assumption side, please, whether you are re-strategizing, whether you are re-documenting your policies, whether you are, re-budgeting your financial numbers across the organization or for a program, please do keep your assumptions documented. Because in current scenario, a lot of things are going on assumptions. The donor comfort, of course, is there on your programmatic strength, but there are very many external factors on the basis which the assumptions are being made. So do document those assumptions, and don't shy away changing those assumptions on a daily basis also. I mean, daily is too aggressive, I'm saying, but even if you have to change your budgets every month also in the next 6 months, please be agile of thinking on those lines. It's not because our assumptions are undergoing a change very frequently. Even the way the institutional money, the FCRA money, the domestic CSR money will change. I think these are very unpredictable situations, as we move forward. So please keep your assumptions documented and very agile in terms of the change also. So I think I'll close here, and any questions, of course, as per the structure and format of the webinar, please feel free to ask. Thanks, Ganesh bhai, Gaurav bhai and Ganesh.
Thank you, Vikas. I think it was a very enlightening presentation. But this was more focused towards the medium and bigger NGOs. Any advice for the smaller ones, because very small ones with having maybe 5-10 people staff and very focused area, working in very focused areas?
Yeah, what in one of the slides I've mentioned. See, of course, I agree. There are many grassroots organizations which are working, at the remotest possible area with 5-10 set of individuals. Here, our submission have been that when I talked about the communication aspect and a bit of a capacity building, I think there the onus and responsibility has to be taken by the bigger or a medium-term organization, because they have to see their implementing partners as partners, in these situations also from a capacity building, because whatever happens at this level has a straight impact on the ground NGOs also. So I think here we can't expect those NGOs to, of course, they'll do whatever they can in the limited capacity. But I think the leadership at the midterm or the larger NGO has to take that responsibility to handhold. And we have seen that happening also. Like in certain cases when I talked about some of the programs which are of course non-COVID, and then they translated into COVID by the donor agreement, had an element of capacity building also built in. This is how you project to the donor also, and you have to keep that element as a buffer to handle your the implementing partners which are grassroots. So I think it's a conjunction of all coming in a collaborative and a partnership mode to and handle those grassroots level organization, because we can't expect much, because for them the entire project budget is the organization budget also at times. So they have to depend on these set of organizations to help them.
Gaurav, because I have a question. See, we're finding in a lot of the NGOs we support that one of their donors might say that, look, we are moving towards PM cares and we have some money towards relief. So can you participate in maybe community feeding or whatever? I mean, and then you find that people get so excited about community transformation that they might forget the core reason why their entity was set up. So do you see this, the kind of tendency to pivot to something which is dangerous? Is it something that needs to be done? And then you come back to what would be your advice to many NGOs here who may be doing other stuff today than what they were set out to do?
Yeah. See, as a response, I think any NGO would not, let's say, come up. Everybody would, respond to a request by a donor also, which is good. But I think 2-3 points which I'll just quickly mention is that, one, make sure that you're not duplicating the effort. There is a bit of a collaboration, and I'm sure with the NGO fraternity, they know who is working where. There are many NGOs who are working in that space, like Sapir and all, in the disaster response, so that duplicacy doesn't happen. So, of course, you need to make sure that thing. But having said that, I think even though you're diverting yourself from your core because you are pretty responsive in that particular geography or area, I think in a couple of examples, we had seen that if you see, one is the relief and response for a period of time, which could be running into a few weeks to a few months. But if you can curate a project from that, post, that, and then if the donor commitment, I'm sure, with the donor engagement, the kind of commitment the donor has. One can then translate that relief response to a kind of a project mode, which can help that community in a project mode for a longer, perspective, maybe, a year or a 2 year or 3 year. But then I think it has to be intelligently, drafted, curated. Of course, you don't have to run for every response you're getting money for. That's what I mentioned in my, presentation. Do what you're core at, but of course you have to respond also. So you need to be cognizant of the fact, if you can curate a long-term impact project out of that, nothing better.
Yes, Gaurav, over to you.
Yeah, I think any other questions from the participants? I don't see many questions coming in on the chat box. If there aren't any,
Not
then
many.
I think we can go. Sorry?
No, nothing as of now.
Go ahead.
So we can go ahead.
So, Ganesh, can you take over?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vikas. And
thank you, Vikas.
Thanks.
And thank you, Gaurav. I think it was really good to understand the landscape, and it kind of resonates with what a lot of us have been seeing in terms of what needs to be done, which is where this whole concept of relief to recovery to resilience came about. And I totally agree with you that nobody can look at the crystal ball and see how the world will progress, the country will progress, and our cities will progress. So we need to be very agile and being able to sense and respond as much as possible. So I think that's clearly something that we need to look at. So thank you. I think we've set up a great platform for our 3 showcase NGO presentations. And I'm going to start with PAN-IIT Parfi and introducing Kalyan. Kalyan is the founding Sevak and executive director of the PAN-IIT Alumni Foundation. And for the past 10 years, Kalyan himself is an engineer from IIT Madras and did his management in the Indian School of Business. And today, of course, SVP has been leading SVP Mumbai has been leading the engagement with Parfi. We have one of our very, very active partners, Jagdish, who's been actually working with them. So over to you, Kalyan.
Thank you. Let me just. So thanks, Ganesh and SVP team. It's a wonderful platform, and I can see so much of wisdom, not just this from the calls from Mr. Myra's sessions onwards. It's wonderful that you guys are already doing more with less, which is the theme of today's presentation. And I just thought I wanted to share some ideas on that. And I think just this very fact that this webinar has so many participants, 150, 200, with minimal resources being used, itself shows that we are capable of doing more with less. So my name is Kalyan. I represent the Pan IIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation. It's a not-for-profit. I will explain our work in a short while. But my theme today is to say that we should scale impact work in times of COVID. So I think what we do now is more important than ever. So let's get started. I hope you can all see my screen, and yeah. So I think this is the Dilbertish kind of a way of doing more with less. And if we don't do, we neither will we be there. So it's important that we do this. So let's start with some affirmation of faith. I mean, this is what I told my team right after COVID. I told them that we have to have faith first in the organizational impact and the good karma. So I think this goes to all the peers in the non-profit sector. I think we'll all be around. And there's a fantastic poem from Rudyard Kipling. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on 1 ton of pitch and toss and lose, and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. So I think we need to keep ourselves in good faith. This is important to have it. So let's get started now. So the Pan IIT Alumni Foundation is headquartered at IIT Bombay. The objective of the entire foundation is to bring IITian spirit to vocational education exclusively for the underprivileged. So that's what we kind of focus on. It's basically for the underprivileged that we kind of want to do this. And we work with a unique model where we do non-profit joint venture with the state. And then we set up very high quality IIT-like infrastructure. We offer them assured jobs. They get a 100% skill loan because we actually go out of the way to give admissions to people who are, for example, based on multidimensional deprivation score and those kind of things. And there's an institution in every district in the state with which we are kind of in partnership with. Yeah, so that's what we kind of do. And sorry. Yeah. So this is the example of Jharkhand, for example, where we have these kind of 10,000 candidates capacity. We have something called Kaushal colleges, which are 1 to 2 year trade license courses. We also have residential gurukuls, which are 2-3 month interventions in construction, infrastructure, textile, logistics. And we've just, before COVID, we just proposed, in the government in principle has accepted a concept called Kaushal Vidya Academy, which is a 2-year ITI integrated 11th, 12th program for all the government school educated kids. So they can come into this. It's proposed to be a LEED certified 50-acre campus, fairly state of the art. Of course, it won awards. This is the map in which this will be practically in every district. It's fairly impact driven in that state. So yeah, so let me start with our what we have done and what is learning that I think we can share to the larger group, and how we are going about scaling up impact. So let me first start by saying do more, right? What are we doing more? We have actually launched something called Swasth Seva Parivartan. I will explain about that in a second, but it's India's largest public healthcare education initiative that we want to do at this point in time. We've also done something very interesting and useful for people who want to get into the tactical elements of how do you kind of deal with COVID in a practical sense in your communities, in the works you do. That's called baseline testing of candidates. I'll explain that as well. Of course, we've done COVID relief in whichever way we can. Our residential training centers will be on institutional lockdown, but after the restrictions are lifted, we intend to kind of start blended training and treat them like basically self-contained communities because they're residential, after doing certain thermal and marker screening. And we wish to focus on, which has been always our traditional sectors, healthcare, migratory construction, textile, logistics. All of them are actually requiring lots of matching of people who want jobs with the employers who want them. So even if there is some lesser growth, I'm sure it should be fine, right? What's the with less part, right? So I think this is important for others, peers to think about, is to look at other sources of funding. Donor is one source. but we should look at co-pay. For example, we do that with skill loans. We need to, and this is where I wish to mention that, for example, we have JP Morgan is one of our donors. They've been super proactive, very helpful. They've reached themselves out saying, is there anything you need us to support in? They've been very happy to kind of, let some of the grant be repurposed as working capital to ensure no impact to the staff, at least till this point in time. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us that we need to build corpus for continuity in the sector. And the HDFC group with whom we actually started the Kaushal College, Nursing Kaushal College initiative, in the previous years, has actually already given some part of it to us. So I think it's an important lesson that we should all take from what, for example, Vikas has also said. So let's jump into the Swasthya Seva Parivartan program. It's public healthcare education in India, as you know, is very bad shape. This is from the INC report, which is the Indian Nursing Council annual report of 1819, page 42, that the total annual intake of nurses in government nursing colleges affiliated to public hospitals across India is 8728. That's it. We actually have 8,700 fresh A&M nurses coming into government nursing colleges. And why is this important? Because those nursing colleges are affiliated to public hospitals, which are actually going to be at the forefront of COVID, medical servicing for the underprivileged and poor Indian folks in rural areas, district areas, which is what the chunk of India lives in, right? So we only have 8,728 helping hands. Contrast this to compared to any other hospital, even AIIMS for that matter. A lot of final year students who are under supervised practicals actually do a lot of, for example, first degree work so that the full-time staff can focus on something more specialized. This happens in John Hopkins, Stanford, world over. But in India, we have done two things wrong. One, we did not put enough nursing seats on the table, and we have also deprived the public hospitals of these helping hands, in our so far whatever we've done. And what PanIIT did, for example, in last 1 year, and Ganesh has actually visited the center a couple of years back, and I'm happy to inform that we've really scaled it up. We are now the largest public healthcare education system. In 1 year, we've built 960 seats per annum kind of a capacity in Jharkhand alone, right? And this we did, as I was saying, through a non-profit joint venture where you get all the permissions. I will show you the infrastructure. It's fairly IIT-like. And the beauty of this is it's also very livelihood providing for the nurses. So while they service the hospitals when they are in residency, when they are in training, once the training is over, they're very, very comfortable to choose either the private sector or public sector. They already, most of them are placed with Apollo as well. And when they are training in affiliated public hospitals, it's a huge boost. So I'll show you some of the centers where we actually are, in some sense, the second line of nursing staff, or I would say nursing, interns in the entire district hospital. So our nursing colleges are in the same premises as district hospitals, and we are actually, as it stands today, very, very proactively supporting all of this. And of course, incidentally, they also won the top 3 ranks of the state. So it's a very good model that got created. And, if 8,728 is your denominator, honestly, it's not difficult to do something really substantial to change this whole story. It's such a low number to start with. So that's why, these are some of the glimpses of our centers. As you can see, it's a very high quality setup. The admission is to the poorest. So the idea is, in some sense, IIT meets Super 30. Right? How can we get poorest to the folks to get the best of the education? And they are very passionate about serving and nursing. And that's important because it is not about technical competency and all of those. The attitude in a nursing profession matters, especially in times like these where there is risk on the healthcare giver itself, right? So that's important. And these are some of the glimpses of our centers. So we are there now in 6 to 8 districts. And this is what happens. So their supervised practicals in the public healthcare system is very valuable. So what we've now decided to launch is a program called Swasthya Seva Parivartan, which is to actually do 5,000 A&M nurses in low HDI states where this is most required: Bihar, Assam, UP, Orissa, all of these areas. and with extending COVID training to the public healthcare workers as well in the same premises, the ASHA workers, ANM, GNM workers. So the idea is that we can actually, in some sense, use this opportunity of COVID to prepare for. I'm sure this is a 1.5 year horizon issue. It is not going away in 1 month by lockdown. That's just preventive. It is not curative, and therefore we need to keep our public healthcare infrastructure at least somewhat ready to be dealing with relapses, with future pandemics, and now with the migrants, for example, returning, there will become a next wave of infections that will hit. So we need to really have our public healthcare in a much better space than it is today, and it is our job to do more but with less. So that's the theme which I think we've taken on. This is a initiative for the first time. We normally don't do program stuff like this. We don't launch campaigns, but since our inception, we've been doing silently our work. But this is the first time we are reaching out to the IIT community, to everybody, saying, let's change this and make it happen. So this is now some tactical stuff I'm jumping into. So this is interesting for people who are who want to know, how do you really medically deal with COVID-19. I know, of course, there are these rapid tests and there's RT-PCR, etc. But I think what we did was we followed a simple Wuhan clinical protocol. I don't know if you can see it. There's a very interesting flow chart. I will leave it with the team. So what they say is we have to look at for 2-3 markers. One is, of course, oxygen saturation. That's very important marker that one has to see. It's simple. It's very easy to measure. There are small 2,000 rupee devices today that can be used. Second is, of course, complete blood count. And third is, of course, what is called lymphocyte count. So I think if we are in fever. So I think if we can do these kind of things, we actually commissioned SRL to do 1,000+ of these tests to baseline to our candidates before they were sent home, so that everybody is healthy. And these are the kind of tests we can start initiating, low cost, much more easily accessible than the current, rapid or RT-PCR. And it's not a very definitive thing, but it gives you a baseline. And these are some of the things in your own institutions we can start getting into. Yeah, that's important. Incidentally, we're also working with the Jharkhand government to set up some COVID testing facilities, 3 of them in different medical colleges they have. They wanted our medical expertise from our doctors who run the nursing colleges. So we have offered that as well. So we've also done utilization of colleges as quarantine. These are some of the facilities that we have. As you can see, this is the quarantine center in the district hospital, near the district hospital nursing college that is attached. This is something interesting. It's called Cobot. It's COVID robot for medicine distribution and food distribution without touch. That Chaibasa, for example, which is a state in Jharkhand, the collector is an IIT IAS, so he kind of supported and did this interesting innovation. We also have blended learning coming in. We have folks with WhatsApp groups. So we've actually WhatsApp, we've turned it into an educational tool from an entertainment tool. And, so there are groups, there are classrooms, there are assignments, videos getting posted. So the Google Classrooms roll out to our trainers. The trainers in turn roll it out to WhatsApp groups, because most of the students we deal with might not have email ID, etc. We've also supported those who wish to avail hostel facilities. We continue to give them shelter, very safe, very securely with quarantine. So I will just leave it on a personal thought, which I think is important for all of us. When we cannot go outward, let's go inward. And I think the famous song, which was immortalized by Rafi 60 years back, is important. मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया, हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया, गम और खुशी में फर्क न महसूस हो जहां, मैं दिल को उस मकाम पे लेता चला गया. So I hope that kind of conveys my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalyan. That was absolutely fascinating. And I must share some personal stories with you, all of you. I remember about 3 years ago, my niece from San Francisco was visiting. And she told me, "Uncle, take me to the most dangerous part of this country." So the only place I could think of was a little place called Bundu, which is between Ranchi and Jamshedpur in Jharkhand. And that's, if you can think of anything which is really Naxal infested, it's that. So I took this young girl there and we went and spent the whole day in the Parfi center. And I was amazed by the homogeneity. They've taken people from the villages, and the kind of motivation, the caliber, the training was absolutely mind-blowing. So then last year when I went back to Ranchi for something personal, I said, let me see the nursing center. So they took me to this place called Idki, which was mentioned in the slides. And then, of course, having grown up in Jharkhand and have a smattering of Bhojpuri in my vocabulary, I actually said I'd show off my Bhojpuri to them. And I actually talked to them a little bit. And I asked them, do you all understand Bhojpuri? They all looked a little strange. And I said, where are you from? She said, no. The lady who was running it, an army major, she told me, they're all from various tribal districts of Jharkhand. So I said, how many languages do you girls speak? And all of them were very young women, probably in the 18, 19 category. And they said, in this room, and there were 40 of them, there are 22 languages spoken. So I said, each one of you introduce yourself in your language. And believe me, every language was completely different. I mean, every time I go to India, I wonder, Bharat is something that many of us don't understand, sitting in Pune and Hyderabad and everywhere else. Kalyan, there's a question for you from your mentor, Jagdish.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit, maybe in 30 seconds, how you managed to build this real partnership with government? Because I also think you're a role model of working with a state government. I mean, you'll hear Ruchi talking about working with the municipal corporation. But how do you do this? I mean, how does a complicated government like Jharkhand trust you so much?
Correct. So I think, the secret sauce, if I may spill it today, is actually what I call as a trifecta of cases, right? There has to be an economic case, there has to be a political case, and then there has to be an impact case for the government, all coming together. So the politicians will be happy if jobs are given on their behalf and they let them do the honors. The bureaucrats are happy if, for example, this is actually much better than, for example, take our nursing colleges. Normally, if they had to run government nursing colleges, there is a staff, union staff commission that they have to go through. They have to give scheduled jobs. There's a whole lot of lifetime of employment. All that goes away with one swoop, and they get, it is much honestly cheaper for them than actually, because the students are co-paying as compared to, these. So it's a business case for them. And of course, the third thing for people like us, which matters, is the impact case. So it has to make sense for the government also to kind of reach out to the poorest to the poor through this. So I think if these three elements are present, the same thing applies to Pune, Connect, for example. So I think these three elements have to come together. If any of them are missing, it's a tripod, the stool will not stand. So just
thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kalyan. That was really fascinating. In fact, Renu, who lives in Shanghai, she's just dialed in and said that was truly a great session. So maybe you have an opportunity for Renu to take you to Wuhan and make it happen.
Yeah, sure.
Of Corona.
Very.
And I also have a friend who's from Singapore, Ajay Dasgupta. So Ajay is saying, indeed a great session, and it's really great work you're doing. So fabulous. So much for introducing us. And now we move to Meera. Meera, of course, and most of you would have heard of Meera Shenoy, because in fact, I know her from the time she was a business journalist and we used to interact very often when I was running Zensar. And I think what she's done is to focus on the disabled or the physically challenged youth. And that's a phenomenal job, not only in Hyderabad, and I think we can take some credit in SVP for taking her outside Hyderabad and working in various other parts of the country, but really great job in actually motivating them, encouraging them, skilling them, and getting them jobs. So Meera, let's hear your story.
Thanks, Ganesh and the SVP family. I think generally what happens is, in any crisis situation, neglected sections of the population like youth with disabilities get left behind. So we started this work 8 years back of skilling youth with disabilities and putting them into jobs. We decided that we should do what India needs. So we are in the villages. We are in difficult parts of India like Bihar, Jharkhand, Guwahati. And we are now going to go closer to the poor, to smaller towns like Udupi. Presently, if you look at our scale, we are in like 18 states of India and in about 38 locations, which actually makes us the largest in the country in this space in the short span of 8 years. And I think this has happened because we listen so keenly to our stakeholders. Our 1 year is always on the ground, listening to the voices of the disabled community, and the other year is always listening to what the corporates and government wants. The work is challenging, but one thing I can tell you, and especially my team will vouch for this, that the work was extremely transformational. So we won many awards, much like Parfi, the latest being the Asia winner of MIT's most prestigious Future Work Award, which is the MIT Innovation Challenge. So life was as usual for all of us. We were opening new centers on invitations of state governments, because many state governments now call us. They want this, what they call different kind of work to happen, which is high impact. And then suddenly COVID hit us. We did what many NGOs did. We helped our trainees to go home safely. We set up a helpline in 11 cities, and we chose these carefully where little work was done. We created sign language videos to make sure that the speech and hearing impaired were not left out of the guidelines and health precautions. And many ministers and governments picked these videos up and put it on their social media handle. We helped doctors who could not communicate to the disabled to communicate to them. But somehow all of us felt this was not enough, because we had to respond to changing times with a skilling product, because that's our core. That's what we do best. That's what everyone looks at us for. So what we did was, and this was, we thought, especially important, because every funder who we work with had called us to say that they were with us in this uncertain time. So we felt we owed something to them as well as the youth. Like all organizations, we had our short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. In fact, we had our 5-year plans ready with a lot of discussions facilitated also by SVP on what does scale actually mean to us. Launching an online product was something we had planned to do 6 to 8 months ahead. Our team decided that we would launch Youth for Jobs online immediately, both for our less educated and our educated youth. They did the homework well. Before the youth left the training centers, they asked them what was it they like, what kind of content, what are the timings which are suitable both to locomotors, speech and hearing impaired, and those with low vision. There were innumerable challenges: low bandwidth, low connectivity. Many of them did not understand technology. Further, we had to look at factors like, can you download easily recording? We wanted to do a lot of analysis. So how do you track attendance? The trainers we found had to be amazingly patient. After looking at various options, we chose 2-3 options. We launched the 15 days training centers, trainings for 3 hours each in the morning and the evening. We had several learnings that in this isolation period, we had tapped into an amazing energy for the youth to be digitally savvy. So while it took a lot of time, there was a lot of excitement generated. So we had hardly any dropouts as we thought. There were many girls with disabilities who enrolled into the program, and that was really wonderful for us because girls with disabilities are the most vulnerable. And we had people from remote corners saying we want to join the program, like Guwahati, for example. We had people from Agartala and other corners calling in. There was also a good sense of jugaad in the team. For example, the Mumbai Center decided that they would use Facebook private, and we let them do that. As a result of this, today we have about 487 less educated youth with disabilities and about 80 educated youth with disabilities who are going through our our online product in 60 batches right across the country. If you ask me what is restricting us from doing further scale, it's the fact that many of the youth don't have Android phones or low-cost tabs. So if anyone's listening here who would help me to do a drive to get these Android phones or low-cost tabs, please write into all of us. We did other things. Our corporate team has launched a series of low-cost webinars after asking companies what would they like to hear for in these moments. Our College Connect team designed 4 webinars for the educators because we thought this is the time to make the ecosphere inclusive. There was I think there was a lot of excitement because this has not been done before. So we had 197 people who applied and we had to stop the registrations. And we have several letters of appreciation coming in. And then the team grew bolder. They said, okay, now this is not enough. So why don't we do our first virtual workshop with University of Mumbai, with corporates and with the government as partner in mid-May to actually facilitate the disabled in higher education and employment. I do realize that these are, I think, trying times from the point of view of funding, from the point of view of the disability community, companies, health, why? Actually life itself. But I think it's also been joyful times because we have all been able to spend time with families. I've learned how to bake bread, lost weight, cleaning, and more important, as Vikas and Ganesh said, I think we've been able to rethink our priorities in this time of silence with clarity. To give you a simple example of my own, I've always been puzzled by the bewildering choices which are available to use a technology platform. So often I used to feel, like I'm in a candy store and each time someone made a presentation, I said, can I gobble this up too without getting a stomachache? But I think now there's clarity and we are working towards building our own platform, a customized platform which will be suitable for the bottom of the pyramid disabled with whom we work. I know it's becoming increasingly difficult to do even good, but Ganesh asked all of us to give a message. So my message is that it's not circumstances that actually define our lives, but what we make of these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meera. That was absolutely fabulous. And it's amazing how much great work you're doing. And you're absolutely right. Not easy to work with the physically challenged, especially at a time when everybody is livelihood challenged. So congratulations on the great work you're doing. Somebody had a question, which was, so how do you keep the motivation of the young people in your centers up and running? I mean, do they really feel that the future is bright? Can they aspire to what they've always aspired to? What are you doing there?
I think I think 2 things, Ganesh. From my perspective, I never talk about targets. I always only drum in the values and keep the vision of the organization amazing in front of them. And my vision is very clear that if you give a job to one youth with disability, the entire family comes out of poverty in a sustained manner. So every team member of mine knows this vision because that's all I keep saying. I don't tell them achieve the numbers or anything. And I think and it's not a highly educated team, but I think they all share the passion and compassion because of the kind of work we do. It's a very different kind of work. The before and after, even if I say it and I worked so long in the sector, is something simply amazing. So I think because they experience it themselves, and additionally, the online gave an opportunity to do something new even for them, the reward I realize comes from 2-3 ways, and it's mainly the feedback every one of them get from companies, the blessings they get from the parents, and I think those are the intangible awards which they get, which keeps them going on this path, like me.
No, thank you so much, Meera. I know that your passion is infectious, because whether it's Ram Kaundinya, who's the lead partner and co-chair of SVP Hyderabad, who's on this call, or of course Ajit Rangnekar, our very, very eminent chair of SVP Hyderabad. I remember coming to visit one of your centers where you were there and brought a reporter along, I think from Deccan Chronicle. And after we spent time with your team, I think we spent the next half an hour just discussing, my God, how enthusiastic these people are. So it's absolutely awesome. And I'm sure if there is one factor on resilience, it probably is enthusiasm. Thank you so much. Moving on to our third speaker. I mean, I keep saying that there are role models of transformation in this country. I mean, one is an entity whose board I'm on called Swadesh Foundation, set up by Ronnie Screwvala. And that's an absolute success story of transforming an entire district in Maharashtra. And it's absolutely amazing what they do. Similarly, what you just heard from Kalyan, which is the whole state transformation, and which again is Jharkhand, and now, of course, moving on to other places. And finally, there is a story of a complete city transformation, which you will hear from the founder. Ruchi Mathur is actually an alumnus of Ferguson College, Pune, and IIM Ahmedabad. Spent time in the corporate sector, and then has decided to kind of dedicate her life. She was chief operating officer of Teach for India, and then for the last many years has been running this entity called Pune City Connect. So over to you, Ruchi.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. So I'm going to just quickly give an overview of Pune City Connect, and but mainly focus on what our journey has been during this time of COVID, for which I have a few slides. So Pune City Connect is a non-profit Section 8 company. Our mission is that of large-scale social change, and we believe that the way to enable that is by enabling collective action, because no one entity can manage large-scale beyond a point. So we work with 4 stakeholders. That's Pune Municipal Corporation by way of government, other non-profits, with corporates, as well as with citizens, kind of aligning all of ourselves together for common purpose. There are 3 development tracks. One is sustainable livelihood, under which there are 2 projects, the lighthouses of Pune, which are large spaces where people from slum communities come for skilling and livelihood. And the other is a project called Global Opportunity Youth Initiative, where we are partnering with Aspen Institute and other global partners for a large-scale sustainable livelihood model in Pune. The second track is digital empowerment, which is about 100% digital literacy in Pune. And the third is in the area of education. The partnership with Pune Municipal Corporation is really the facilitating factor. And just in terms of business model and numbers, for every 1 rupee that is raised with the help of corporate support, Pune Municipal Corporation has been spending around 2 rupees. That's been the case for the last 3 to 4 years since we started. So that's just a quick introduction, and I'm going to move on to my presentation, where I want to talk about the COVID journey really. So I trust this is up on the screen.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for SVP for the series of webinars. It's a great learning space. It's a privilege to be one of the speakers in this space. And I also want to say that I think that the last 6 weeks have really been a time that non-profits have contributed tremendously, to what is happening in the country and to alleviating the situation. And so in a way, though I happen to be on the dais, but what I'm going to relate is likely to be the story of many non-profits. So I want to acknowledge that. And also contribute to the topic of this webinar. I don't feel that there is success yet, but yes, it is a journey, and it has been surprisingly positive from what started off as being as despair or a lot of worry. So 19th March is when actually 13th March is when all the Pune City Connect sort of the centers, the physical spaces, like the digital empowerment centers, the lighthouses, schools, of course, all of these shut down. And so we were like, what are we going to do now? And 19th March is when we started working from home. 90% of us moved to work from home on that day. And I remember I was like really worried, and I checked my WhatsApp messages, and I saw that I'd written this message to a friend on 19th. In fact, I reached out to 2-3 people, saying that, apart from the larger picture and all of that, I'm really worried about Pune City Connect and what's going to happen and what's going to be our future. And I was like, I may need some interim funding. Please help to, to mobilize this because till things come back to normal, we need some help. And of course, it was, articles like this just sort of exacerbated the concern. But in a way, it was good to have all of this worry because it led to a lot of actions. The first of which was organizing ourselves. Organizing ourselves actually is a tougher thing than it seems to be because we have around 55 team members in Pune City Connect, and there are around 34 facilitators who manage the digital empowerment centers along with two of co-non-profit partners. And so it was about being able to organize all of ourselves together, and around 50% of the team actually comes from low-income communities. Around 20% of the team literally lives in slum communities. So it is, first of all, just starting with internet enablement and finding that space in the home to actually have a desk and to be able to work. So that was the first challenge. And then once that was enabled, then it was about, okay, we are set up to work, but what work do we do? Because the centers are closed. And so we thought that we must take up things that normally we just never get around to doing because, whole of life is a blur. And so we started with a humongous data cleaning exercise and also an exercise of listening to our stakeholders. And I'll come to that listening piece later. But for the first 2 weeks, we sort of had frequent hangout sessions during the day. Every single morning from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, the entire team meets. And, it's funny that instead of separating people, COVID has actually brought us together because I have never personally had the pleasure of meeting everyone in the team every day for half an hour, with specific agenda and sometimes non-specific agenda. It actually turned out to be a good thing, the profile of our team, and it really became our strength because as you will see in the later slides, it's the young people who took the leadership to show us what needs to be done. They were our ears on the ground in terms of what's actually happening in the community. And the best part of it all was that we had done some dry runs, etc., but nothing had prepared me for what actually happened on the first day of working from home. And that was that we were tremendously productive. And actually, that's how it's been, for all the days. So once we had figured out that, yes, we can actually work together, the whole idea was that how do we remain relevant? Because that's the question for, I think, facing many sectors, the non-profit sector as well. Like in retail, they say that it's location, location, and location, but in the non-profit sector, you just have to be relevant. And there were so many different messages that were coming from different corners that the communities don't need food because right now they have enough food. After 10 days, they will need food. Some people were saying that people are just starving. Some people were saying that, no, you need to look at emotional resilience, etc. So we thought that let us just go into a listening exercise and really understand from the ground that what is it that is required. And this listening exercise was from top to bottom, including the chairman as well, Ganesh, and including everybody. We all took a personal target of actually talking with a minimum number of people from the low-income communities to understand what is happening. And we also listened to each other. And really speaking, as a result of that exercise, we realized that there seemed to be like 3 big requirements. Definitely food came out to be the huge thing that is required. Emotional well-being, because people were very confused about what's going on. Why have they been told to, why has this lockdown happened in the first place? Because they were not following the news of China and what's happening all over the world the way that the rest of us were. And hence there was a lot of just mental disturbance. And definitely there were more than 60% of the people we spoke with who had more than 50% impact on their monthly income. So we decided therefore to get into relief. And I would say that it is only because of the personal listening and all of the listening that happened that we even took that decision. Otherwise, it did not come naturally to us. For us, this was our very first disaster. And so it wasn't that, as soon as disaster hit, we realized that, oh, we are going to have to supply food. But it was something that was sort of had to be thought through. So that exercise really helped with that. Going into relief itself was, something which was fairly complicated, because it's all very well to think that we are going to provide food, but should it be cooked food? Should it be dry ration? How do we identify the people? How does the distribution happen? How do we maintain social distancing? How do we ensure accountability to the donors? How do we raise the funds? And even very, very simple logistics like transportation, because, because of the lockdown, it was not at all simple to be able to purchase food from vendors and to actually be able to deliver that. And when we started, then we didn't even have any funds. So we just thought that in the past, the board members had, contributed some funds to Pune City Connect. And we took the liberty, we checked with a couple of them, of thinking that, okay, if nothing else, some of that money we'll use for this food effort. And of course, later on, they came on board even to support, just for this food part of it. But finally, really, it was the sense of urgency that drove us to get into this program at all. As of date, there have been 2,700 dry ration kits that have been distributed. Many of them to families that we personally know through our livelihood and digital programs. Many of them to callers on the helpline, which I'll come to shortly. And some of them to, Pune Municipal Corporation also is in the know in terms of which are the people who are most in need. So it may be a pocket of widows who are staying somewhere, or migrants, etc. So that's where we have been, providing kits for as well. And thanks to, I think on this call itself, there are many of the people who have contributed generously for this. We do expect finally to be able to distribute 5,000 ration kits, which would mean at a conservative estimate around 6 lakh meals for people. But all the same, as all of us know, this itself is a drop in the ocean, and there is a lot of hunger which is going on the ground even right now. I think one of the big things that stood out for me in the food, this exercise, as well as in the next exercise, which is to do with the helpline, is the way that the teams came together. So it was absolutely cross-functional teams. Like, there was a point when we decided that, okay, we are really being bad at organizing ourselves for this complex task of food distribution. So let's look at the person who manages the skilling programs, Mamta. She's really good at logistics. And so we pulled her into, overseeing the logistics, and that really worked. So different people from different parts of the organization actually came together to do this. The second relief activity was by nature of this helpline, which is a helpline that is jointly run with Pune Municipal Corporation. It is only for low-income communities because of that whole, all the confusion that was there with respect to who to reach out to. Now, there is also a story of reinvention all along the way, because when we started the helpline, we thought that the main goal is to do referrals. Because people did not know that there was a welfare program running 5 kilometers from their house or 2 kilometers from their house. How do we reach there? So we invested a lot of organizational time and energy in creating a city directory, in creating a list of FAQs, etc. But soon after we started, we realized that, in fact, at this point of time, 98% of calls are just for rations. It's not referrals for telemedicine. It's not referrals for mental health. So all of those other references didn't really, at this point of time, they haven't kicked in, probably because, food is more important in Maslow's hierarchy. And the second thing that happened was that initially we thought that we would do referrals to other food providers, but then we kept getting calls back after 3 days saying, you referred me to this organization, but right now that's not working. And hence we, set up a whole backend verification team. So everyone who called saying that they require rations, there's a verification call that happens, and then the ration kit actually goes there. The best part of this helpline is that it's something pretty sustainable in nature, because like I said, that is the young people who are showing the way. It is the alumni from the Lighthouse program, the people from the communities. They are the ones who are actually the volunteers running the helpline. And thanks to Connecting, an NGO, I think in fact Annawaz is also on this call. Thank you so much, because they are professional in terms of how to run a suicide helpline. And we really got supported a lot in terms of the training to these volunteers for them to be able to listen through emotional distress. And it's funny about, because necessity is the mother of invention. One does something and then there are other possibilities that open up. And one of the possibilities that's opened up with the help of this helpline is that even in non-COVID times, it can continue being a helpline that enables last mile linkages for sustainable livelihood for young people across the city. So that's one of the ideas that are there. So far we've received around 3,600 calls, and one can see the numbers over there. So that was in terms of relief, but at the same time, we also had to look at our business continuity plan and figure out how can one be a facilitator to enable communities to recover. And so, like I mentioned in the beginning, we have the digital programs, the livelihood programs, and education, and all three of them have actually gone online. And for this, it is a person called Ganesh Natarajan and someone called Sonali Ojha who are to blame, because Sonali actually is the curriculum designer, and she reworked the entire curriculum in record time for the Lighthouse and modified the digital curriculum. So 1st April onwards, we've been online for both of these programs, and I'm not going to go into details of these, but just want to show a few glimpses of it and some of the stories related to it. So there on the right hand side, you can see in the table that this program is really something which is extremely relevant. These are, this is the digital program in the curriculum, which is currently there in the online format of the digital program. And people are really using it because right now there is no choice. I mean, initially when we used to run the digital program, it was a matter of usefulness. And now it is a matter of absolute necessity, because you can't pay your electricity bill by going to the to that particular office. You have to pay it online. People are, being able to transfer money to their parents online thanks to this. They are getting their government identity so that they are eligible for, the relevant government schemes. They're of course also looking at long-term or medium-term measures like, job portals, etc. But it is these immediate requirements. Some of them actually, so Grofers started introducing these time slots for buying grocery, and so they were booking time slots on Grofers, etc. And the reason I put this image on the left-hand side is because this lady, to me, sort of epitomizes the whole joy of, putting the digital course online. This is a middle-aged lady. She's from Janta Vasahat. Janta Vasahat is the largest slum community in Pune. And she's really enjoying herself. And this was the fun of, enabling this course through Google Hangouts, through Zoom, on mobile phones of respective, learners, that people just love it. They love being on Zoom and Hangouts. And it's not just the younger people, it's also the housewives. They love this break from, the rest of the chores that they're doing. And I really want to juxtapose this photograph with this photograph. So this is the normal way that the course is run, where, people are sitting in a classroom format. And you can just see that this lady is obviously having much more fun than the people who are sitting on those computers. And what this whole going online has taught us, and the possibilities it has opened up, is that what does it mean when a program is learner-centric? Because when the mobile phone is in the hands of the learner, she can just do whatever. So there, while the facilitator is saying XYZ, the person is exploring, then they're uploading a photo. There's amazing amount of peer learning that's happening. So someone hasn't understood, the rest pitch in and say, no, I'll show you. And here, look at my screenshot. There is an amazing amount of practice that's happening. So earlier we used to say, please come to the center and please practice for an hour. And now they're just doing it on their own because the device is right there in their hands. So this is one of the many ways in which we are seeing that due to this COVID situation, we are actually getting inputs for making the program much more strong and effective than it was. Just a few more photos on the left-hand side. These are, this is the mobile screenshot of, people from Jai Bhavani. In Karve Nagar. Okay, I'd like to talk about the two photos in the center. So you can see that's Vaishali Mane, and her whole family is attending the course, because, and that's a phenomena we've started seeing, that is emerging, that whole families are attending. You can see even the child of the mother in the photo on the left. Also, people are taking the course from outside. They're standing outside. They're so eager to take it. And you can see that in these photographs, that wherever they get an internet connection, they're actually standing there and taking it. And that there is a thank you mail from Vaishali, and I won't go to it right now, but she actually attended the course only during the lockdown period, and this is what she had to say. Of course, in a digital program, it's a dream for a facilitator to get a thank you mail on email, because that's the first part of being internet literate. And these are some photographs from the foundation course and the Lighthouse that have gone online. It's forced us to be very creative. So people have to actually take a break from the program, and on the left hand side you can see a boat. You have to make a physical boat, then you come and upload the photo, then you reflect upon me as a boat, and what does it mean to be in stormy waters, how does one stabilize, what is the analogy, etc. So it's working marvelously, and I think our whole insight from this program has been that even online, one can create non-judgmental safe spaces. Even online, people can feel a sense of belonging and emotional stability, and they can start understanding and getting in touch with their own agency. And there, of course, on the right-hand side is a message that they all made for all of us as a fun exercise while they were on the course. So that's my summary slide, really, that in these last 6 weeks or so, we have listened to around 6,000 people. We have done data cleaning of 40,000 to 50,000 records. We've talked about the relief work. For the first time, we did digital fundraising. The pilot programs for digital and Lighthouse are running with around 300 participants. I'm not able to, yeah. We have done a whole rebudgeting exercise, given all the manpower and all the replanning that has to happen, all the assumptions with respect to what the fundraising and the expenses are likely to be. Plan for Q1 is already made. It's underway for the rest of the year. The donors have been fantastic. They have pretty much all of them said that just go ahead and do whatever you need to as far as the current program year is concerned. And we are in discussions with many of them in terms of what needs to be done going forward. And I think the most fun has been reimagining the new normal for Pune City Connect. The entire organization is online with the project management tool Asana, which is like a dream, because project management always used to be a huge task for all of us, and so on and so forth. So this is something that we are consciously doing and writing down what the new normal will be, so that even when things come back to whatever that new normal is, it's intentionally arrived at. And I think my last slide is really this one. I'm hoping that these words, relief to recovery, to resilience, or to thriving, also mirrors the organizational journey of Pune City Connect. It's been a lot of help that one has got from different learning areas, including a lot of other non-profits, and understanding what they are doing. One has to keep adapting to what's going on. We've had a lot of help from our board members. I think the most important thing, as Meera also mentioned, is the fact that the team has worked with common purpose. And we are grateful that amongst all the narratives of fear and overwhelm, we could nurture the narrative of agency and possibility in the communities that we are working with. So with all humility, a wing and a prayer, hope that many of us will be able to emerge stronger and more effective in the achievement of our goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi. I'm sure you can sense the applause. But let me ask you, there are a lot of questions for you, but let me ask you two quick questions. One is from Pallavi Padgaonkar, who says that in spite of such a chaotic situation and working with the poorest of the poor in the slums, what helped you to plan so meticulously to the last level of detail?
We were very, very disorganized to begin with. So I think one has also learned by not doing it right. For example, the first time we did food distribution in the Bhavanipet Lighthouse, there were more kits that went to people it was not intended for, but there were people in need, than the ones that we had on our list, because you just can't say no on the ground. And social distancing, I'm afraid, on that occasion, it went for a toss. We were not able to manage. And so we really did a pause and a stock take, and then we figured out a whole process that how can one make this organized. And the next time it happened, it was beautiful, because now the distribution is silent, it is organized, there isn't even noise. And yeah, so I think it's by the sort of learning the hard way.
Another question, Ruchi, from Sanjeev Sachar, who's our Delhi chair. So Sanjeev is saying that as part of the listening you're doing on the helpline, is there any new issue that you have picked up which we should all be cognizant of and be aware that we have to address that post-lockdown?
Yeah, there is huge emotional distress. And that's so actually what we've been doing, and also with the help of Bobby, who's my colleague, is on this call as well, is that this back-end verification team. So on the main helpline, we are only able to do calls for around 3 minutes, because Pune Municipal Corporation has told us you have to keep the line, you can't keep it engaged. So we can't have long conversations. So now, because we want to have long conversations, because the whole purpose is to listen in, so we now do a second layer of calling, which is outward calling. And we have 10-minute conversations with each person to understand. And essentially it is related to, I don't think that there's anything that we would not be able to foresee, but just the extent of it and the depth of it is huge, in terms of confusion about livelihood, not knowing what's going to happen after this, when is this going to come to an end, and just fear, lot of fear and anxiety.
Okay, there's another question actually from Pallavi again, but I'll kind of couch it in a question that I wanted to ask you. Over the last 3 years, Ruchi, you and your team have received so many accolades. I mean, you got chosen by Aspen Institute to be part of their Global Opportunity Youth Network. You got the Prime Minister's Award for the best social initiative across all smart cities. And you personally have been chosen as one of the most powerful women in the social sector by Business Today. So how do you keep your head on your shoulders? How do you motivate yourself to work in the social sector every day?
Motivate to work in the social sector is very simple. That's just because of the sense of purpose and the need to see equity and justice. And head on shoulders is not at all. I mean, there is so much that one is not doing, right? For every one thing that happens, there are 10 things which are so critical to do and are not happening. So right now one is just hearing about all the things that happened, but there are so many gaps. So there is no question of not having the head on the shoulders.
Thank you very much. And just take one last question from Padmaja Shastri. She's actually asking it to everyone, saying, how do you manage, any of you who are in relief and food supplies to the poor, how do you manage the background checks, considering that there is urgency, as at the same time that you have to be aware of potential frauds, etc. So any of you would like to address that? Ruchi, how are you doing it for your 2,700 so far and 5,000 more?
Well, essentially, all the people, so we have around 9,000 students enrolled into the Lighthouse program, and there are around 48,000 citizens who got trained through the digital program. So especially the people who are in the Lighthouse program, we know all of them personally. And so there is, that part is really, in fact, our young people from the team who are staying in communities and all those, 6,000 calls that we've made, they have been around this, understanding that where is the need, what is the need. And therefore, each Lighthouse center head and team have put together what is the list. And for the helpline, like I said, we are doing the verification of each and every person who calls, and we are checking that have they already got a kit, if so, is it over, is it still there, etc. And just understanding as a result of from the call, that what is the genuineness of the caller. Most of the time it's quite clear, and so there's a recommendation, yes, no, and then we go as per that.
Great. There's a compliment for all of you from Anuaga and Meher Padamji, saying you people are true torch bearers, doing phenomenal work. Keep it up. Any closing thought, Meera, and then Kalyan? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we will hum honge kamyab, so let's keep the faith, and we will emerge stronger on the other side. So I think as far as the impact sector is concerned, there is no recession. In fact, we are up for a scale up. So
thanks, Kalyan. Meera?
I was just thinking, Ganesh, that I think we should have more of such sessions where we all inspire each other by our good work. Amazing work around, amazingly, I think, conceptualized virtual workshop. And kudos to all of you for doing it.
Yeah, SVP must be thanked. I think, Ganesh, you've been wonderful. I think worked more than normal times. I think we're all doing that.
I think it's been amazing, and thank you all who have been part of our series, because my good friend Mark Jankelson, who's the chair of SVP Melbourne, so he actually just mailed me on this, saying that, look, it's amazing how much motivation you guys have. And I think from this 1.5 hours, every time I listen to Meera, Kalyan, Ruchi, and of course, any one of the 43 other people who are leading our NGOs, it's absolutely inspiring. So it's so much better to be inspired by the social sector than to be inspired by money-making shareholders, which I was for 35 years. So I'm sure that is the real, sorry, I hope none of my former investors are here on this call, but nevertheless, but I think this is really what, and I think Kalyan, you alluded to that, I think this is really what life is all about. And I'm so delighted that so many people support the SVP movement. So many people beyond SVP are doing such amazing work, which reminds me that the next, on the 13th of May, we have a lovely series, part of the series with Mark Jankelson and Meher Padamji, and chaired by none other than Ajit Rangnekar, where we're going to talk about leadership in these critical times. And in parallel, Swati Agarwal and 3 of our general managers are actually pushing this series forward. So literally every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll showcase 2 or 3 NGOs. We have something coming up on June 13th. I'll remind you much later, where we got Louis Miranda and Amit Chandra in conversation on what makes philanthropy scale in this country. So we have some outstanding ideas coming up. So please stay tuned. And thank you very much for spending Saturday morning with us. And thank you for, Lakshman Himnani from China, and of course, Renu, and so many other people from around the world who have decided to support this thought leadership series. I'm truly inspired. And I think what you said, Meera, is what I'd like to end with, which is that you see the vision, you don't see the targets, because the targets automatically, I mean, people come to you because they see the vision and the passion, which to me is the most important. But I'll end with my favorite quote, which is Joel Barker, one of my philosophers, who says that in any situation, vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision just passes the time, but vision with action can change the world. So thank you very much, everybody on this call, everybody in the audience. Thank you for helping us change the world. Thank you for what you do to change the world, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks.